We learned that some of them are wittier than I thought they were in their comebacks. I actually, other than the points where they were all talking over one another, I mean, look, I like to mix it up as much as anybody, but it's kind of ineffective if no one can hear you. And other than those times, I was actually quite pleased at the fact that at least half of this debate was really policy driven. But I will tell you the one thing we didn't learn that I really, really wanted to learn. I was so happy that there was a question on housing. We haven't spoken about housing at all in this election, and it is a primary issue. You know, in Canmore, we are still seeing restaurants, even in this economic downturn, who have to close their doors because they don't have staff, because the staff don't have anywhere to live. And we're still seeing that in Calgary, even though our vacancy rate is going up. So we have to have a serious discussion about housing. So I was thrilled the question was there, and I was extremely disappointed in all of the answers. You know, Mr. Harper said low interest rates make people go into home ownership and somehow that solves the housing problem. Mr. Mulcair said if you have more disposable income, then you're able to manage all your housing costs, which is a very conservative argument, interestingly enough. And Mr. Trudeau vaguely mentioned something about incentives to build more rental housing. We need to build affordable housing. We need tax credits for the market to build rental housing. We need programs to help people get into their first home, to clear up the supply clogs throughout the housing continuum. And the federal government has a very, very serious role to play in this. And I just did not hear that from anyone today. The new, huh? You know, of course, they were using Calgary as a placeholder for the problems that all cities face. But I was happy that city issues really came up a lot during this debate, because I've said many, many times, if you don't have a plan for cities across this country, you don't have a plan for the economy. Cities are 75% almost of our GDP. 3/4 of our economic output happens in cities. So as you heard from all three of them today, if you're not investing in reducing congestion and getting people to work, if you're not investing in making sure that companies setting up can trust that their employees have somewhere to live, and if you're not investing in making sure that everybody has clean water and other infrastructure, then you're not really investing in the economy. So I was very pleased to see nobody said we shouldn't build infrastructure. The argument really was how and when. As a Calgarian, I was a bit disappointed in the lack of specificity around energy policy, and in particular in the lack of specificity or difference between the parties on market access. This is a really big deal, and I really would have liked to have seen a more resounding claim to market access. I thought it was very, very interesting that both Mr. Mulcair and Mr. Trudeau said to Mr. Harper, I think the way Mr. Trudeau said it is, you claim to be the best friend the Alberta energy industry has ever had, but you haven't got a single mile of pipeline, Tidewater pipeline built. And I think Mr. Mulcair said almost exactly the same thing. It's an interesting argument because it implies that both of them are interested in getting Tidewater pipeline built. And I wish we had had a little more clarity on that front. I actually think the question of who won or who lost is kind of irrelevant. The Canadians who were tuning into this debate were tuning in because we're at a point where it's 30-30-30. And it's very clear to me that citizens are making their decision based on policy. They're not making their decision based on who has wittier retorts or looks better in a purple tie. That's me. And I was actually pleased that we got as much policy as we did in the debate, but I would have liked to have a lot more. All right, thank you.